This is Up to Date, a public affairs presentation of your Lake Charles Cumulus stations.
Good morning and welcome to Up to Date. I'm Melanie Stahl with Lake Charles Cumulus Broadcasting. In the studio with us, we have some of the cast and crew of The Producers that's happening at Axe Theater. Opening day is May 27th. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the program.
Hi. Hi.
First, we're going to talk with Mr. Robert Marcantel. He is the director of this performance. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the plot of The Producers?
Well, the plot is about a man named Max Bialystock who at one time was considered a great producer. And his career has kind of hit the skids. And so in order to raise money for his shows now, which are like bad B movies, he courts little old ladies so that he can get their money. And he is met by this young man named Leo Bloom, who is an accountant who has come to do his books. And when Leo does the books, he realizes that Max could make more money with a flop than he could with a hit by overselling shares of the show and pocketing the rest of the money. So they go on this quest to find the worst play ever written, directed by the worst director in New York, with the worst actors, the worst choreographer, and they find a little gem of a play called Springtime for Hitler, which is written by this man who has a great deal of affection for Adolf Hitler. And instead of the show being a flop, it winds up being a hit. And so the rest of the plot is the result of that unusual circumstance for them.
Very good. And can you give us the dates as to when the show is going to start running?
The show opens May 27th and 28th and runs the first 2 weekends in June. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The performances on Friday and Saturday are at 7:30 p.m., and the Sunday matinee, the last weekend, is at 3 o'clock p.m.
And now you mentioned earlier about Mr. Leo Bloom, the accountant, and we do have that actor with us today. Welcome to the mic, Mr. Jeremy Johnson.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me.
Now, how do you feel about your character?
Oh, my character's actually a great character to play. It's definitely acting for me because we are kind of polar opposites. But he's a mousy, kind of scared young guy who's got a dream of being a Broadway producer, but doesn't necessarily have the skill set that most people who would go into that kind of job would take. So he approaches Max Bialystock after going in to work on his books, and through talking back and forth, they cook up this scheme, which Leo's not necessarily completely bought into doing, but upon returning to his regular life, because that was his comfort zone, he decides that, there's a lot more for him to be in this world than just sitting there counting other people's money. So he goes back to Max, and between he and Max, they raise the money, they get the actors, they do all this stuff in order to create this bomb on Broadway, and through kind of a perfect storm of bad things happening for them, the show ends up being the biggest hit out there. So, yeah.
I'm just laughing just because I know the work that goes into putting on a great production. So in my mind, having to go through all this effort and trouble just to put on a bad production, you have to wonder, was it really worth it?
Well, I mean, I think yes, because luckily in the end, it actually all comes full circle for them and it becomes a positive thing. And I think that what they learned throughout the process was how to overcome their problems that they all had as being individuals and working as a group to create a symbiotic relationship that allows them to move forward and prosper in life. So there's an overarching theme there that necessarily isn't completely laid out in the plot of it, but if you watch it from beginning to end, you realize, hey, things kind of worked out for these guys, and now they're in a much better place in life.
So how have rehearsals been going?
Great. It's a great cast. There's a lot of great people involved. this is my first show since college, and I'm a singer by birth, but this is the first time I've done anything in theater since the late 90s. So this has kind of been a joy and a challenge and just sort of an interesting thing. But, we've got a great group of people. Our producers are here with us right now. The producers of the producers are here right now. So they're a great young couple that is really energetic about what's going on in the theater. Bob's great for letting us laugh and have a good time with everything. And, he's the director and he's obviously got the vision, but he also is great with letting us improv some things in there and see if they work and turn things around to what the cast is going to be able to show the public the best show that we can get out of it.
And now you kind of hinted at it earlier, but for those who aren't familiar with the show, it is a musical. There's a little bit of singing going on.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of singing going on. Quite a bit of singing. There's what, I don't know, 9, 10 big numbers in it.
There's more than that.
Yeah, there's a great number of big numbers. There's tap dancing, which I'm sorry, but I'm doing. And that's going to be really, really interesting considering that I did not come from a tap background, but I've been in tap class for quite a while now. And there are big show numbers, big Broadway numbers. There's Ginger and Fred love numbers and, Fred style love numbers. It's pretty great. But Bob,
it should also be noted that this is a Mel Brooks musical. It was originally a movie in the 1960s with Zero Mostel and Gene Wilder, which was a big hit, and then later was remade into a Broadway musical starring Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick. And it currently holds the record for being the most Tony-nominated and Tony-winning Broadway musical out there. Now that record will probably be beaten
broken
this
by
year.
Hamilton.
It'll probably be broken by Hamilton. So we're going to milk it for everything it's worth until the next Tony Awards. But then it was very successful on Broadway, and then it was remade again into another movie. So it was a movie that was made into a Broadway musical that was made into a movie. And it's typical Mel Brooks humor, too.
You were mentioning earlier about having never tap danced before, and it reminds me of Debbie Reynolds and Singing in the Rain, and how she hadn't had a lot of dance experience before making that movie with Gene Kelly.
Now, I know
So
that being said,
the channel is inner Debbie Reynolds. Is that what you're
Channel your inner Debbie Reynolds.
That being said, I'm not an experienced tap dancer, but a lot of the other cast are experienced tap dancers. So, just don't look at me.
Well, there we have it. Now we want to bring to the mic next the producer of the producers. We have with us Mr. Corey Tarver.
Hey, how's it going?
So, what inspired you to get involved with this production?
Well, to be honest, what inspired me to help out with the production is I was sitting in a board meeting and they had selected dates and a director, and they were starting to plan the show, and they had no one to produce the show. So I guess I didn't know any better, so I volunteered, and that's kind of how I ended up producing the show. And it's my first one. It's my first time being production manager of a show, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work. I've learned a lot. It's always very funny and ironic to tell people that I'm the producer of the producers. It's because it's interesting to compare and contrast the reality of producing a show with what Max and Leo go through in this musical, and a lot of it is kind of about. A lot of the way Max portrays being a Broadway producer is kind of, whining and dining and getting the girls and going to the parties, and then other than that, you just go home and sleep it off, and you don't really get into they don't get into a lot of the details about what a producer actually does. So, but it's fun to compare and contrast.
And what are some of those details?
Well, what I do is just all the business stuff of the show. It's a lot of telephone calls and emails and coordinating this person to be here at this time and do this thing, and making sure that we have somebody lined up to pay that bill when it comes due and reserve that thing when we need it, and this gizmo and that gadget, and make sure the set designer's talking to this person. It's really just it's a lot of time on phone and email communicating other people to do what their jobs are. And It's definitely interesting. That's kind of what I do at work. Also, I work at a car dealership and I'm a manager there, and so it's really a management position. It's just coordinating and managing the efforts of others, and the better the others are that you're coordinating, the less work it is. So it's really, I think the work that Bob does as the director and the work that my wife does as the stage manager, they're really the ones that are really putting in the hours and doing the hard work, and all I do is just make sure kind of people show up and make sure we have the stuff we need. So.
And did you get to make any of the creative decisions for the show, such as making a scarf red or picking out a piece of the scenery?
I try to leave most of the creative decisions to Bob and the costume designers and the set designers. I had to make a few decisions that we just didn't, that we realized at the last second that we had to have a decision on, but really the creative vision of the show and the way it looks and sounds and feels is really the director.
Well, Corey also took kind of a role as being some of the background scenery design.
Actually, I did. I did. I am kind of multi-boxing or wearing more than one hat. I did some of the artwork for the backgrounds also for the backdrops that the show has, and collaborated on some of that. So kind of in community theater, you see that a lot. You really see a lot of people wearing 2 or 3 different hats. You put on your figurative producer hat, you take that off. You put on your painter hat, you take that off. You put on your caterer hat. We've all done our share of the catering, and so there's a lot of multi-hat wearing.
Yeah. Pretty much Corey's going to be like a cat herder at the end that's covered in sequins and glitter.
Okay. You mentioned painting, and I know that the Axe Theater got a new paint job recently on the inside.
It's in the process of getting a new paint job. Yeah, hopefully by the time you guys all come out and see this show, it will have a sparkling new, beautiful paint job. But in fact, we've got a lot of the cast members from the producers helping us with the paint job. We did a kind of this is the 50th, this upcoming season. This is actually the conclusion, the climax of the 49th season of Axe Theater. So next season is the 50th, and we kind of raised some money and helped put together a remodeling project in anticipation of the 50th season. And there were some technology upgrades. We upgraded some of the computer infrastructure and got a new ticketing software and enhanced some of the sound equipment and redid some wiring for the sound and did a lot of remodeling, cosmetic remodeling of the front fascia of the stage and also repainting the entire inside of the theater, which someone, bless their heart, donated that beautiful green paint, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago, I guess, but it's time to replace it. So we're gonna get it repainted and hopefully we'll have that done by the time this show runs.
And I think the last time I was there, y'all were remodeling the lobby and concessions area. Have y'all made that area bigger, or what's going on?
Most of the changes in the concessions and lobby area are logistical as opposed to structural. It's the same shape and size. Unfortunately, it's the same shape and size as it always was because the physical layout is not ideal. But we're trying to work on some logistical things that cause the traffic flow through that area to be better and cause people to not be standing out in the rain and huddled into one little stairwell corner. And we're working on some logistical things to make the traffic flow a little better.
Very good. Now, Axe Theater, for those who don't know, can you tell us where's that located?
Yeah, it's on. If you take Kirkman Street north of town and go under Interstate 10, the next landmark you see is the railroad tracks crossing Kirkman Street, and right before you get to that, the appropriately named Railroad Avenue. It's not on the corner of Kirkman and Railroad, but the general campus is if you're on the corner of Kirkman and Railroad Avenue, you can't miss it. Reed Street is the street on the opposite side of the theater from Kirkman.
Number 1 Reed Street.
1 Reed Street is the kind of symbolic name. I got into trouble as the producer of the show by using 1 Reed Street as the address of the theater. A lot of my communications with ticket vendors and with the costume rental company and with Music Theater International, the licensing board for the show, I made the mistake of thinking that because the theater was called 1 Reed Street Theater, 1 Reed Street was the address. But that's a made up, totally spiritual and figurative name. The address there is actually no physical address at the theater. I don't think there's only a P.O. box. But 1 Reed Street Theater is the name, and if you Google 1 Reed Street Theater, it'll come up right there on the corner, right in between on Railroad Avenue, in between Kirkman and Reed.
And for ticket information, can you give us a phone number and website for how we can get that done?
Sure, absolutely. The phone number is very simple to remember. It's 433-ACTS. If you just touch those numbers on those letters on your phone, that goes to one of the board members. They circulate that phone around, and so we'll always be able to help you on that phone number. Or ACTS Theater with an RE.com, ACTSTHEATRE.com. You can buy tickets there from right there on the front page, or you can like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page where we keep everything really up to date. That is The Producers at ACTS. It's facebook.com/The Producers at ACTS. Or if you just get on Facebook and search for The Producers at ACTS, it'll come up. And with our new state-of-the-art 21st century ticket sales solution, you can actually buy tickets from right there on Facebook.
And speaking of the show, let's get to talking about the rest of the cast. We already met one of the stars of the show, Mr. Jeremy Johnson, but let's talk about some of the other characters. And we have with us, of course, the director.
Well, the role of Max Bialystock is played by Barry Whitten. The role of Roger Debris is played by Mark Broussard, and his assistant Carmen Gia is portrayed by Bronson Lopez, who's a newcomer to the theater. Ula, the role of Ula, the sexy assistant, is going to be played by Kristen Harrell. Who else is there? Franz, the role of Franz Liebken, the guy who writes Springtime for Hitler, is played by Zach Hammonds. One of the neat things about this show is that the people who are in the ensemble get to play a lot of very different roles. So in one scene, they might be a little old lady, even if they're a man. We might have them dressed in drag. In another scene, they might be an accountant. In another scene, they might be a theater goer. In another scene, they might be a street person. It really has been, well, let's just put it this way. I think a lot of the cast members are now suffering from an identity crisis, and which is going to make all the local therapists in town very, very happy.
Lots of men in pantyhose.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're going to be passing out Zoloft backstage.
Just as the producer of the show, I'd like to take a moment and make sure that everybody understands that we are not actually driving these people to clinical depression or insanity. That would be a extreme liability issue. Bob was being very sarcastic. Mel Brooks is known for a very, very, there's a Mel Brooks style of humor, and it's a very sarcastic. What I've been telling everybody is that his strategy for this show is if I can offend everybody in the audience a little bit, then I won't offend anybody. And that's very much how the show is presented. It's offense to just a comical perspective, evidenced by the fact that, like Bob was saying earlier, the point of this show is for Max and Leo to go find the worst show they can possibly imagine. And that show is, we mentioned it earlier, is Springtime for Hitler. And it's basically it's a very flamboyant love story and dance and rainbows and flowers presentation of Hitler taking over Europe in World War II, which just bleeds with Mel Brooks. So talk about the show, talk about Springtime for Hitler a little bit and kind of how that works.
Well, I think the most important thing to say about it is that as much as they intended for it to be an offensive affront to general society and what general society understood about Adolf Hitler, is instead it comes off being a huge satirical just kind of jab at the whole history of it, and it turns Adolf Hitler into this caricature that is amazingly funny. And even if you saw the movie, the Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick movie of this, people initially started to get really, really offended at the subject matter of the show that they put on, and it wasn't until Hitler made his first stage appearance in it and they saw him, well, then the audience broke out into extreme laughter because it's so over the top. It's so over the top. Yeah, it's completely over the top. I mean, it's my favorite line that Hitler says is, "I'm the German Ethel Merman." So if you can imagine, and for you young listeners out there, maybe Google Ethel Merman and just see what that's all about. But I think that one of our principals, Mark Broussard, who plays this character, really embodies what he's going to need to embody in order to make people understand that this is just completely hilarious. I mean, it's so funny.
Yeah, his character winds up playing Adolf Hitler quite by accident, and so his character uses it as an opportunity to channel his inner Judy Garland, and so there's a lot of mannerisms that he has. There are a lot of inflections in the way that he sings that embody Judy Garland, and he just milks that for everything it's worth. It's kind of like his lifelong dream to be Judy at the Palace.
Mark has been in several shows with Axe Theater, and he's, in fact, the way Lori and I got to know him was stage managing another show, and so I had no idea that he got out on stage, and this has been a very interesting way to see him. He does a fantastic job portraying that character. His character is Roger Debris, who is the worst director in New York, and then he ends up through various happenstances becoming the lead role in the show, and Mark just does a fantastic job portraying that.
Yeah, I mean it comes from a place of him being very, very predisposed to doing these kind of drippy, glittery, traditional Broadway,
Busby Berkeley
type things, where it's just a lot of really beautiful people and a lot of really beautiful clothes doing some not so great choreography and not so great music, but it, visually might be quite stunning, but it has no true substance to it, and that's what his background is. And so when he gets approached about doing Springtime for Hitler, he's like, oh no, it's too drab. I mean, they're losing. It's too dark. It's too drab. It's about war. It's about all the things that obviously the Nazi Party and Hitler were about, and they turn it into a reinterpretation of it that makes it just. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, some of the symbolism and some of the dancing and stuff that comes across in it, and just how silly it ends up being, but it makes it for a great laugh.
Well, one of my favorite lines in the whole show, a guy named Jerry Johnson gets to sing it, and the line is, "Watch out, Europe, we're going on tour." And the idea is that they turn World War II in fact, at one point Hitler has a dance-off with Stalin and Winston Churchill and FDR, who of course comes to the dance off in a wheelchair. So it's a very satirical, very, very, very sarcastic, funny way of rewriting history to just be this absolutely silly presentation. That
was actually one of my questions: was do we get to see Hitler tap dance?
We get to see him try.
You get to see him try. He does a very he last night, or one of the previous nights at rehearsal, I asked him if he was going to be able to sneak Gangnam Style into his dance off, and he said he doesn't know if he's going to be able to get that one in, but he touched about every other dancing style.
Yes, he touches so many places.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's all we're going to say about that.
It's probably best.
So once again, The Producers going on at Axe Theater. Opening night is May 27th, and it's going to be running till June 12th. June 12th. And for ticket information, can you give that for us one more time?
The phone number is 433-AXE. The website is axetheatre with an R-E, ACTSTHEATRE.com, or facebook.com/theproducers@Axe.
And does anyone have any closing words?
I think that if people come out, they're just going to have a really, really good time, because this show is so light and so silly. But more importantly, the music is really, really great. The music was all written by Mel Brooks, and the music is just absolutely wonderful, and you'll probably go home singing Springtime for Hitler. Which
don't go to work singing.
Hey, just so you know, I was actually in line at the pharmacy one day singing Springtime for Hitler and got looked at really oddly by the lady next to me.
Been walking down the hall at work singing "Keep the Gay."
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the major side effects with anyone who just does community theater or professional theater, is you end up saying things in public, not realizing other people can hear you.
Well, it becomes
and they have no idea what you're referencing.
Yeah, we've been talking about this lately, about how it becomes almost like a secret language, and you're almost speaking in code to each other, to people who don't understand what it is that you're saying, but people who are inside the production get the reference. And so it's almost like speaking a secret language with each other.
Yeah, but when you're blaring your cast album while driving down Ryan Street with the window down and Springtime for Hitler does come on, not everybody around you really understands what's happening there.
The thing that blows my mind about being like, this is my first show to produce, the amount of time that these people are willing to commit to this, it's amazing. It blows my mind. And you talk about it, it's really like a brotherhood. Like it's a group of people that they commit so much of their lives and their energy and their heart to it that there's a bond that's created. Number one, just because you spend so much doggone time with each other, you can't hardly get away. You forget that you're only friends with these people at the theater for like 3 months. But it's just amazing the amount of time that these people are willing to commit. Totally volunteer, with no compensation other than just the sheer enjoyment of being a part of it. So,
wait, we don't get paid?
Oh, well, we're going to talk about that later. But you really can see that when you go to community theater and you see these people. This is totally just from their heart that they just want to get on stage and have a lot of fun. It's really cool to watch. So definitely come see it. If for no other reason, just to see these people just sharing something that they believe so much in. It's really, really fun.
You did get paid. You got tap dancing lessons.
That's a good point.
They were free.
Yeah.
But Kathy Kurth, I have to give a shout out to her. She's worked with me very patiently while she got me through the whole tippy tappy toes thing.
Well, the great thing about Kathy Kurth is Kathy Kurth does this professionally, and she's doing it for us for free. That's one thing. Like, I sell cars for a living. If somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, do you want to give away some cars for free?" I can't do that, But Kathy's especially a unique person because she's doing what she makes her living doing. She's sharing her time doing that same thing with us for free. So definitely, if we give one shout out to somebody, I would say she deserves a shout because she's the one that's literally not only cutting into her own time but her own pocketbook by doing this for free for us. So.
And it should also be noted that the choreography that Kathy has taught the cast is the original Broadway choreography.
Very good.
So what the audience will see is the exact same choreography that they would have seen had they gone to New York.
I love that. That makes me want to go right there. Well, thank you guys so much for coming in. It's been a blast.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So once again, that's the Axe Theater opening night, May 27th. Go on out and see the producers. It's a great bunch of folks. I'm Melanie Stahl with Lake Charles Cumulus Broadcasting, and now you're up to date.
This is Up to Date, a public affairs presentation of your Lake Charles Cumulus stations.